My name is Serafina, though most people just call me Sarah. At 32, my hands are rarely clean. They are perpetually stained with rich soil, calloused from hauling bags of orchid bark, and nicked from the sharp edges of terracotta pots. I am a botanist, and my life's work, my heart, and every dollar I've ever saved are invested in a single, climate-controlled greenhouse nestled on 2 acres of land I inherited from my grandfather. I call it the Verdant Sanctuary. It is not a commercial nursery that caters to suburban gardeners. It is a laboratory, a library of living things, a repository for some of the rarest and most genetically significant orchids in the world. My family views my sanctuary with a mixture of polite confusion and quiet disdain. My father, Richard, is a portfolio manager who understands assets only when they appear on a stock ticker. My mother, Eleanor, is a former interior designer who believes a plant's only purpose is to be a well-behaved accent in a well-decorated room. To them, my life's passion is just Sarah playing in the dirt. Their admiration, their investment, their entire focus is reserved for my younger sister Isabel, or Izzy, as her thousands of online followers know her. At 25, Izzy is a lifestyle curator. Her days consist of artfully arranging avocado toast, posing in gifted resort wear, and dispensing vapid advice about living your most authentic life. She is beautiful, charming, and has never known a single day of real responsibility. While I was taking out loans for my master's degree in botany, my parents were funding Izzy's brand building trip through Bali. While I was working double shifts at a diner to afford the specialized humidifiers for my greenhouse, they were buying her the latest camera equipment to improve her content. The crown jewels of my sanctuary, the culmination of a decade of my work, are a collection of 12 Phalaenopsis orchids I personally cultivated. I named the unique hybrid Aethel, Old English for noble. They are not like other orchids. Their petals are the color of a deep twilight sky, a velvety, iridescent indigo that seems to shift and shimmer with the light, dusted with flecks of what looks like silver. They are my masterpiece, a genetic miracle that has taken years of cross-pollination, sterile lab work, and patient, obsessive care to create. They are priceless to me, but as my family would soon discover, they were far from valueless to others. The storm began to gather 3 months ago, at my father's 60th birthday party. Izzy, after ensuring all eyes were on her, made a grand announcement. She had been contacted by Aura, a new ultra-luxury wellness brand. They wanted to collaborate with her for their official launch event. "It's my big break," she announced, her voice ringing with drama. "They want me to host the launch event. We're talking major media, celebrities, other top-tier influencers. If this goes well, it could lead to a 7-figure contract." My parents were ecstatic, their faces glowing with pride. The catch, of course, was the venue. Aura wants something unique, something organic and lush that reflects their brand, Izzy explained, her eyes flicking towards me for the first time that evening. Every high-end venue in the city is booked, and the ones that are available are astronomically expensive. They expect me to find something spectacular. A heavy silence fell over the dinner table. I could feel the weight of their collective gaze. I knew what was coming. "Sarah, darling," my mother began, her voice dripping with honeyed persuasion, "your greenhouse. It's so lovely and rustic. It would be the most perfect authentic backdrop for Isabel's event." I placed my fork down, my hand suddenly cold. "Absolutely not, Mom. The sanctuary is a sterile, scientific environment, not a party venue. The humidity, the temperature, the light, it's all precisely controlled. 100 people breathing, spilling drinks, bringing in outside contaminants, it would be catastrophic for the orchids." "Don't be so dramatic, Sarah," Izzy scoffed, rolling her eyes. "They're just flowers, Sarah. We'd be careful." "They are not just flowers, Izzy," I said firmly. "They are the result of my entire professional life. The Athol collection is genetically unique and irreplaceable? The answer is no. I left the party early, the accusation of my selfishness hanging in the air behind me. I knew they were angry, but I believed my directness had settled the matter. I was wrong. I had drawn a boundary, and in my family's eyes, that wasn't a reasonable act of self-preservation. It was a declaration of war.
My grandfather, a man with hands as gnarled as ancient oak roots, had been a farmer. Not a modern agri-businessman, but an old-world cultivator who understood the silent language of the land. He had taught me that the most valuable things are not built, but grown, and that true strength lies in deep, unseen roots. When he left me the 2 acres of land, it came with a warning, delivered in his quiet, rumbling voice. "Sarah," he had said a week before he passed away, "your family, they're like morning glories. Pretty to look at, but they'll climb over and choke out anything that's trying to grow steady and true. They don't mean harm, not really. They just don't know any other way to be." He'd then given me a small, ornate iron box. Inside was the deed to the land and a single skeleton key. "This deed is special," he told me. "My own grandfather had it drawn up by a clever lawyer back when the railroad tried to seize this land. There's a covenant on it, tied to the old well on the property." He pointed out the window to a stone-lined well near the back of the property, capped with a heavy slate lid. The covenant is an agricultural preservation clause. It states that this land must be used for horticultural or agricultural purposes. The moment it's used primarily for a commercial event, a party, a wedding, anything that isn't about the cultivation of living things, the covenant is violated. "What happens then?" I asked, my teenage mind struggling to grasp the legal complexities. "It gets complicated," he said with a wry smile. "It triggers a right of first refusal for the adjoining property owner, Old Man Hemlock's farm." Hemlock's farm was a massive, multi-generational organic farming operation that bordered my 2 acres on 3 sides. The covenant gives them the right to purchase this land for the original price my grandfather paid for it back in 1922, which, adjusted for inflation, is about $5,000. I was stunned. So if Mom and Dad ever tried to, say, host a big party here, they wouldn't be hosting a party, he finished. They'd be handing the deed to our neighbors for the price of a used car. It's an insurance policy, Sarah, to protect the dirt from the glamour. Don't ever tell them about it. Let them think it's just land. People like them never bother to read the history. That secret was my shield, the deep root that anchored me. In the weeks after my father's birthday, my family began a relentless campaign of psychological warfare. It started with guilt. "Isabel is so stressed, she's not sleeping," my mother would say in hushed, mournful tones over the phone. "This event is everything to her, and she feels her own sister has abandoned her." Then came the financial pressure. "We've invested so much in Izzy's brand, Sarah," my father told me during a tense lunch. "If this falls through, we stand to lose a significant amount of money. The family can't afford that kind of hit right now." Through it all, I stood firm. The answer is still no. The risk to my collection is too great. Their tactics then shifted to something more insidious. They tried to make me feel small. They called my work a hobby, my orchids houseplants, my sanctuary a glass shed. They were trying to devalue my life's work in their own minds, to make their eventual transgressions seem less severe. The breaking point was a week before the scheduled launch event. I received a panicked call from a botanical garden in Costa Rica. A rare fungal blight was sweeping through the region, threatening a species of orchid that was a direct ancestor to my Athel hybrid. They needed an expert to fly down immediately to help consult on containment and preservation. It was a crisis I couldn't ignore. I had to go. This meant leaving the sanctuary unattended for 5 days. My assistant could handle the basic watering, but I needed someone I could trust with an emergency key. My mind reeled. There was no one else. With a sense of profound dread, I knew what I had to do. I had to give them the key. I had to let them walk into the trap. I drove to my parents' house, the spare key to the greenhouse feeling like a lead weight in my pocket. "I have to fly to Costa Rica for an emergency," I explained, my voice tight. "I need to leave this key with you. It is for a true botanical catastrophe only. A fire, a flood, a total power failure. You are not to enter for any other reason. You are especially not to let Izzy or her event planners anywhere near it. Of course, darling, my mother said, her eyes lighting up with an emotion I couldn't quite decipher. It looked like relief. You can trust us completely. Family is the most important thing. As she took the key from my hand, her fingers cool against mine, I felt a silent apology to my grandfather. I was entrusting his legacy to the very people he had warned me against. But I also felt a grim resolve. They thought I was giving them a key to a greenhouse. I knew I was giving them just enough rope to hang themselves.
I was in the humid, dense air of a Costa Rican cloud forest, carefully taking spore samples from a wilting orchid, when my phone buzzed with a notification. It was an Instagram alert. Isabel was live, and the title of the video was My Aura Launch Dreamscape. A cold, sickening dread washed over me. My hands started to shake. I tapped the notification. The video feed was blurry at first, then focused on my sister's beaming face, professionally made up, her hair a cascade of perfect waves. She was standing in the main atrium of my greenhouse, my sanctuary. "Hey guys," she chirped, panning her phone across the scene. "Welcome to the most exclusive wellness launch of the year. Isn't this venue just everything? So organic, so lush." Behind her, my life's work had been transformed into a trendy party space. The central aisle, where my research benches should have been, was now a makeshift bar. A DJ was set up in the corner, his speakers vibrating perilously close to a rack of delicate seedlings. Waiters in crisp white jackets moved through a crowd of at least 100 people, carrying trays of champagne and hors d'oeuvres. Fairy lights were crudely strung from the greenhouse rafters, their wires wrapped around the sensitive climate control sensors. But it was what I saw in the background that made my heart stop. The Aethel orchids, my 12 priceless, irreplaceable hybrids, were no longer secured in their sterile, quarantined alcove. They had been moved, arranged as a dramatic centerpiece on a table laden with ice sculptures and champagne buckets. One influencer was leaning in close, her phone's flash popping as she took a selfie, her glass of champagne held precariously over the velvety indigo petals. I felt like I couldn't breathe. This wasn't just a party, it was a desecration. It was a violation of every principle, every rule of botany I had ever held sacred. The risk of contamination, of temperature shock, of physical damage from a drunken crowd was catastrophic. I frantically tried to call my parents, my sister. No one answered. Of course they wouldn't. They were busy hosting the event of the season. I watched the live stream in a state of horrified paralysis. I saw a guest splash champagne near the Eiffel collection. I saw another lean against a support beam, knocking a pot of a rare orchid to the floor where it shattered. Izzy, oblivious, continued her tour, pointing out my orchids as if they were party decorations she had ordered. And look at these amazing blue ones. The Aura team said they matched their branding perfectly. So gorgeous. The livestream was flooded with comments. Most were fawning praise for Izzy. But then a few different comments began to appear. Ones that my sister clearly didn't notice. One person wrote, "Are those the Aethel hybrids? I thought Dr. Vance kept those under strict quarantine. This is incredibly reckless." Another comment appeared from a well-known botanical journal. "The Serafina Vance collection at a party? This is a botanical crime scene." A professor from a major university wrote, "My God, is that a champagne bucket next to a Phalaenopsis Aethel? Does anyone have a direct contact for Dr. Vance? Her life's work is being destroyed on a live stream." The scientific and horticultural communities, my communities, were watching in real time as my sanctuary was violated. Someone in the comments posted the public property records for my land, including the owner's name and address. Then came the comment that changed everything. A user from the Maine Farmland Trust wrote, "Wait a minute, I know this property. It's the old Miller farm. It's got one of those old agricultural preservation covenants on it, tied to the Hemlock farm next door. This event is a massive violation." My heart started pounding again, but this time it was with a different emotion. It was the thrill of a long dormant plan finally clicking into place.
my grandfather's insurance policy. The live stream ended abruptly a few minutes later. I didn't know why, but I could guess. The party was still in full swing when the first set of headlights appeared at the end of the long driveway. It wasn't the police. It was a dusty Ford F-150, followed by two more. Old Man Hemlock and his two sons, their faces grim, got out of the trucks. They were not dressed for a party. They were dressed for work, and they carried clipboards and a surveyor's wheel. My father, seeing the trucks, went out to intercept them, his face a mask of annoyance. "Excuse me, this is a private event. Can I help you?" John Hemlock, a man whose family had farmed the adjacent land for 150 years, held up a piece of paper. "According to this deed, Richard, your daughter's little get-together just violated the agricultural covenant on this property. The covenant gives us the right of first refusal to purchase the land for its 1922 value. We're here to exercise that right. We've got the check right here, $5,000. Now, if you'll excuse us, we need to survey our new property."
The chaos that erupted in my greenhouse was, I was later told, a sight to behold. My father, sputtering in disbelief, tried to block the Hemlocks from entering. "This is absurd. You can't just take my daughter's property." "Wasn't your daughter," John Hemlock replied calmly, stepping past him as if he were a minor obstacle. "It's ours now. The law is the law, Richard. Your family has always thought you were above the old ways. Turns out, you're not." Inside, the party came to a screeching halt. The sight of three weathered farmers in work boots striding through the middle of their chic, exclusive event was so jarring it silenced the DJ and stopped the flow of champagne. Izzy, her face a mask of horrified confusion, confronted them. "Who are you? You're ruining my event. This is a private party." "Not anymore, little lady," the eldest Hemlock son said, not unkindly. "This is a private farm." The guests, sensing a scandal far more interesting than any wellness product, began filming on their phones. The Orchid-launched Dreamscape had turned into a real-time reality show of a family's public humiliation. The brand representatives from Aura, seeing their meticulously planned event implode, began frantically packing their products, their faces grim. My mother, it was reported, simply fainted. By the time I landed at Boston Logan 2 days later, the story had gone viral in a way my sister could only have dreamed of. #OrchidGate was trending on social media. News outlets had picked up the story, framing it as a bizarre tale of influencer entitlement versus old-world farming rights. My name, once known only in quiet academic circles, was now attached to a scandal. My parents had unplugged their phones, and Izzy had deleted her social media accounts, her brand in tatters. I didn't go to their house. I went straight to the sanctuary. John Hemlock was there to meet me, his expression one of quiet sympathy. The place was a wreck. Empty glasses, trampled plants, and a thick, sticky residue of spilled drinks covered the floor. But the Hemlocks had already moved my precious Avel orchids back into their quarantined alcove. "Check them over myself first thing, Sarah," he said with his voice a low rumble. "They look stressed, but I don't see any immediate signs of blight. You got lucky." I felt a wave of gratitude so profound it almost brought me to my knees. "John, I can never thank you enough. He held up a calloused hand. "Your granddad was a good man. He knew what he was doing when he set up that deed. He was protecting the land." He handed me a folder. "Our lawyer drew this up. We're exercising our right to purchase, just like the covenant says. But the next page is a lease agreement. We'll lease the land back to you for $1 a year, for as long as you want to keep growing things here. This land is your home, Sarah. We're just making sure it stays that way." I took the papers, my vision blurring with tears. This was the neighborly decency, the quiet integrity my own family had never understood. When I finally arrived at my parents' house that evening, the scene was as of utter devastation. My father was sitting in his armchair, staring blankly at a wall. My mother was lying on the sofa with a damp cloth on her forehead. Izzy sat on the floor, wrapped in a blanket, looking like a ghost. They all looked up as I entered, their eyes filled with a mixture of terror and resentment. "You," my mother whispered, her voice venomous. "You did this. You set us up." "I did nothing," I said, my voice cold and clear. "I told you no. I set a boundary and you trampled all over it.
You, Izzy, were so desperate for fame that you were willing to sacrifice my life's work for a party. And you, I said, looking at my parents, were so blinded by her that you let her. You didn't just break my trust, you broke the law, and you violated a legal covenant that has been attached to that land for 100 years. Granddad didn't trust you, and it turns out he was right. We've lost everything, my father said, his voice hollow. The lawsuit from Aura alone is going to bankrupt us. Our name is a joke. Izzy's contract is gone. Her career is over before it even started. No, I said, and the word cut through their self-pity. You have not lost everything. You have lost money, and you have lost face. There is a difference. You want to know what losing everything feels like? It's the feeling I had in Costa Rica watching a live stream of my life's work, my entire future being destroyed for the sake of some champagne and fairy lights. They had no answer to that. The truth of it was too stark, too absolute. I am not here to save you, I told them, my voice devoid of emotion. You are going to face the consequences of your actions. Aura will sue you, and they will win. You will have to sell this house to pay them. Izzy, your influencer days are over. You are going to have to find a real job and learn what it means to work for something. This is your rock bottom. The question is whether you decide to build something new from it or whether you just decide to lie here and drown. I placed the lease agreement from the Hemlocks on the coffee table. This is my future. The sanctuary is safe. My work is safe. Everything that truly matters is protected. You are on your own. I turned and walked out the door, leaving them in the ruins of the perfect life they had built. For the first time, I felt no guilt, no obligation, only a clean, quiet sense of release. The storm had passed, and in its wake, the ground was finally clear for something new, something honest to grow.
The months that followed were a brutal education for my family. As I had predicted, Aura's legal team was merciless. The lawsuit cited breach of contract, property damage, and severe reputational harm. Faced with irrefutable evidence, including dozens of videos posted by their own party guests, my parents had no choice but to settle. The settlement took everything: their house, their investment portfolio, and their retirement savings. They moved from their sprawling suburban colonial into a small, rented, two-bedroom apartment, a humbling reversal of fortune that stripped away the last vestiges of their social standing. My father, forced out of retirement, took a job as a junior account manager at a small firm, a position far below his previous station. He was quiet, subdued, the booming confidence that had defined him now replaced by a weary resignation. My mother, stripped of her charity boards and social clubs, found work as a cashier at a high-end grocery store. The irony was not lost on me. Izzy's fall was the most dramatic. Her name was toxic in the influencer world, a cautionary tale of hubris and scandal. The brands that had once courted her now wouldn't return her calls. Faced with the stark reality of having to support herself, she took a job at a local coffee shop, trading sponsored posts for a minimum wage and the daily humility of serving lattes to people who once followed her online. I did not ride to their rescue. I upheld the boundary I had set. I was polite during the few brief phone calls we exchanged, but I offered no financial assistance and no emotional absolution. This was their winter, and they had to endure it alone. I poured my energy into my own restoration. With the help of a small army of volunteers from local botanical societies who had been horrified by #OrchidGate, I spent weeks cleaning and repairing the sanctuary. We replaced the contaminated soil, repaired the damaged climate control systems, and carefully nursed the traumatized orchids back to health. 6 months after the incident, a small, unassuming manila envelope arrived at my greenhouse. Inside was a cashier's check for $5,000 and a handwritten note on plain paper. A first installment. I am paying back what I cost you. From Isabel. I was stunned. I learned later that she had sold her designer car, her collection of handbags, and every piece of gifted jewelry she owned. The money was a pittance compared to the damage, but the gesture was monumental. It was the first time in her life she had ever taken true responsibility for her actions. Our relationship began to thaw, slowly and cautiously. She would sometimes visit the greenhouse after her shift at the coffee shop, her designer clothes replaced by a simple uniform. She wouldn't talk about her old life. Instead, she would ask quiet questions about the plants. She learned their names, learned how to spot the signs of distress, and even developed a surprisingly gentle touch for repotting. She was, for the first time, seeing my world not as a backdrop for her own, but as something real and valuable in its own right. My parents' journey was more difficult. My mother struggled deeply with the loss of her social identity, but in the quiet of her new, smaller life, she began to find a different kind of purpose. She started volunteering at a local library, her skills as a former designer finding a new outlet in creating beautiful displays for the children's section. My father, humbled by his return to the bottom of the corporate ladder, started calling me simply to ask about my day. He never mentioned money or the lawsuit, just asked about my research, about the weather, about the health of the orchids. A year after the incident, on a crisp autumn afternoon, they all came to the sanctuary. It was not a party, but a quiet gathering. Izzy, who is now a shift manager at the coffee shop and taking night classes in horticulture, brought the small, hardy sapling as a gift. My parents brought a simple, homemade lunch. We sat on a bench outside the greenhouse, the place of their greatest transgression, and for the first time, we talked. They apologized, not with the dramatic, self-pitying sobs of before, but with a quiet, profound sincerity. They apologized not just for the party, but for the years of blindness, for a lifetime of favoring one child's glitter over the other substance. We didn't know how to value what we couldn't understand, my father admitted, his voice thick with emotion. Your work, it's quiet, it's patient. We were always looking for the big, loud explosion of success. We never appreciated the strength it takes to grow something slowly. I didn't offer a grand cinematic speech of forgiveness. I simply nodded. It's a start. Regrowth takes time. My family is not perfect. The scars of our past are still there, but they are healing. We are learning a new way to be with each other, one based on respect rather than expectation, on support rather than sacrifice. The storm stripped us down to the bare soil, but from that soil, something new is beginning to grow. Something more honest, more resilient, and far more real. My sanctuary is thriving. The Ethel orchids, against all odds, survived and are more beautiful than ever. Their iridescent petals are a daily reminder that the most extraordinary things are often the most fragile, and that they are always worth protecting. My grandfather taught me that strength lies in the roots, and he was right. I had held fast to mine, and in doing so, I had given my entire family a chance to grow new ones of their own.